What's going on, my friends? This is Shane Lowe coming at you live from SuperSense Presents. I hope you're doing well. Today I am hanging out with a long-term friend of mine. This is Philip Bennefall. How you doing, man?
Hey, I'm doing well. How are you?
I'm so glad. I'm going well. I'm on my autumn break. I have to get something out of the way right at the beginning. I've known you for a really long time, and I feel like I still mispronounce your last name.
Oh, Benefall. I think you said it
Bennefall. Oh, I,
correctly.
I am doing it right.
Yeah, I
Okay.
think so.
Okay, perfect. I nailed it then. Philip and I have a long interview history. I interviewed him for the first time when I was 11. At the time, you were really focusing on game development, at least in the blind community, right?
Yeah, I think so. I
Yeah.
mean, I still sort of am working on games, but I'm working on a lot of other things as well at the same time. So it's kind of you know, a multi-project situation.
Yeah, exactly. So what's your background like?
My background is, I guess I'm a software developer. I'm an audio producer, sort of amateur singer slash voice actor. Yeah, that's basically it. I've worked with game development, and right now I'm for the last I think 7 years I've been working at a company called Elias Software, where we make middleware for audio and music in games, and yeah, it sort of combines my two passions, which is music and software development. So it's a very good combination for me.
Yeah, absolutely. That makes a lot of sense, actually. And a lot of those come out, if you're not familiar with Philip's games, a lot of these things also is obviously Philip on the back end doing the programming, but then you have Philip doing the majority of the sound design and typically voice acting in the games as well. Um, what can you say about that? I mean, it's been a couple of years since you've released a game, and a lot of people in the blindness community at least know you for blastbay.com, where all the games are hosted. So how do you feel about that at this point in time?
Well, I mean, at this point, it's sort of a hobby, that I spend as much time as I can on, when I'm not working, because I have a full-time job at Elias, and that's, my bread and butter, so to speak. But when I'm not thus occupied, I still like to make games. I have one in development right now, which I can't talk too much about it right now, but because I don't want to give any kind of, release schedule or anything like that. But it is the largest game that I've ever made, and I think it'll be great. It'll just take a while to finish.
Yeah,
Um,
it's a really exciting concept. I can't. We'll have to do a follow up when that gets closer. I'm really excited to
no, thank
see.
you.
Yeah, of course. I'm really excited to see it's so exciting to me because it kind of transcends the realm of audio games that we have up to this point, in a lot of ways, in a lot of really innovative ways. Um, and I don't want to say too much because, as we say, it's in pretty early stages for the project. So I'm just excited I'm excited for it to progress more so that we can hear more, because it's a really neat project.
Thank you very much.
So
It'll just take a
yeah, of
while
course.
to finish it.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. In 2027, we'll
Yeah,
be back
yeah.
with Philip. With
hmm That's the earliest planned release date.
Yep, yep. Can't rush you on that. What so what is Elias? Let's talk a little bit more about that.
Elias is an engine that originally was just music, but now it's music and audio. It's intended to, I guess, the original concept for the music engine was to make the music in a video game as adaptive and, I guess, as customized for your particular playing experience as it would have been had you been watching a movie. So, in a movie, the story is known. You have a certain number of frames and you have a certain amount of time where, the music needs to do something, convey something. And, the composer will write the score accordingly. Whereas in a game, the story is not even written yet. So you don't know, like one player could be, stopping in the middle right before, a big fight and go grab a cup of coffee or something. So, the music has to adapt to the style, in which each player, I guess, goes through the game. But it should still sound written. It should sound as if the composer wrote the score just for your particular experience. So in a sense, the player becomes the conductor for the
Right.
orchestra without realizing it. That's kind of the idea. And now we've expanded it to also feature audio. And when it comes to the audio, we try to give the audio designer, the sound designer, as much control as we possibly can. So we're removing a lot of the stuff that you would do in the game engine, like through scripting and so on, in the game engine itself. We're moving that into the realm of the audio utility itself. So the audio designer can actually create logic. You can create what we call patches, which is like could be a car, for example, and you can design all of the logic for the car, like when you're driving on this material, or when you're accelerating this quickly, then it sounds like this, and when you're braking really fast, or so all those things that you would normally script, you can actually do that live in the tool, and you can preview it within the game or within the audio tool itself as you're doing it. So it's a very sort of live experience when you're designing it. You can hear it right away as you're making changes.
That's really interesting. I didn't know that it's now applicable to audio design, and I think that's going to take a huge step, in making the audio of games more immersive, and B, I think that might contribute to the accessibility of some video games, because you have a lot of video games that are, well, not a lot, but you have a few video games because you have a few video games that are accessible because the sound design is so thorough, and I think this might actually enhance that, which could be really cool. I remember there was a really cool Elias demo, that Philip showed us, where it was kind of a simulated idea where you as the character were walking on a bridge toward a fight, and so there was this ambient music that was kind of building the tension, and as you got closer, the trumpets and the higher register horns were coming in, and the vocals, like the choir vocals, were coming in as you got really close. But then if you turned around and walked away, the music would scale back as you were getting closer to the safer end of the bridge. So it was a really cool concept, and I think you can find that example. Isn't that on YouTube somewhere, or it's in another?
Yeah, but we have a lot of demonstrations, that one included, on our YouTube channel, Elias Software. So you can go and check it out there.
What do you think about this? Do you think this could increase the accessibility of some video games?
I certainly hope so. I mean, because one problem that sound designers usually have is that they are idle for a large part of the development process of most games, because they don't have anything to do yet. They can be out recording in the field or so on, but they have to wait for the game to be playable before they can start actually implementing their logic and their sound design into the actual game. So they have to wait for a long time, and then they are in crunch mode, and they're pulling their hair out, sleeping in the office, that sort of thing. Now, with the way that we've set things up, you can actually start working even when there isn't a game. You can actually just simulate everything, if you will, live as you're doing the sound design. So you can start much earlier, even though, for example, you might not have a level to run around in. You can still design the environment, the whatever vehicles, characters, footsteps, all of that. And then once it's done, you take simple, I guess, input parameters from the game engine, like, okay, the player is doing this, touching this surface, accelerating at the speed, and so on and so forth, going into this zone which has reverb, and so on and so forth. You can do that when the game is actually playable. You can just plug your sound design in there, and it'll just work. So it takes, the idea is to decouple a lot of this stuff from the game engine, and move it into the sound design utility, which is the Elias 4. Essentially, it's the new name that we have. So Elias 3 is just music, and Elias 4 is both the music and the audio combined.
That's amazing. What kind of games are using Elias now? Where can people, is there a place where people can actually play live examples of games that are using the Elias engine?
Yeah, there are loads, but unfortunately they're not blind friendly. Most of them. It's we have everything from AAA to indie to cell phone games, consoles, all of that. But they're I guess visual games, so I can't play them either, which is sad. But
That that
that's
is a that is a shame.
yeah.
I do want to talk about the blindness aspect a little bit, because a lot of people, when you see an interview with a developer, you might be looking for some accessibility tips. So this is going to be really interesting because I'm not a developer, so I think we're gonna start talking about things I don't understand very well. So we're gonna see how well I can pretend. So, what languages do you develop in? What does that look like for you? What does that process look like?
Me personally, or I guess
Yes,
as a blind developer. Okay, me. I guess
you
my favorite
personally.
language would be C. I can do C++ as well, obviously, but I prefer C. But I mean, it's not so much about the language because when you know development, you can pick up more or less any language in a few days because you just have to learn the language specific constructs and then you're good to go. But I guess my language of preference would be C, and I work mostly in a command line environment. I guess we call it CMD on Windows. The shell, I guess the most common one on most Unix systems is Bash. So, I spend a lot of time in those. Um, and then, you have a bunch of compilers. You have GCC, you have CLang, you have MSVC, like Visual Studio. And, you can use I guess, the graphical front ends, also known as IDEs, integrated development environments. You can use those for the most part. I mean, they're becoming a little bit more accessible now, like Visual Studio Code. Uh, Visual Studio itself is improving, but that's sort of hit and miss. So for me, just for my own comfort, I tend to do a lot of it in the in the shell command line. So you know you can do cross-platform development that way. I can develop on my Windows box. I've got the WSL2, which is the Linux subsystem for Windows. So I can compile native Linux binaries, which is good if you're doing server stuff like writing server software, things like that.
Hmm.
And then I also have my suite of compilers for Windows itself and so on. And then if I want to go in, we have a Mac, so I can remote into that and build stuff there, build stuff on the consoles. So you really have to have an arsenal of these tools. But once you're familiar with them and they're sort of similar, many of them, then you can do a lot of interesting things on a lot of different platforms.
How is that? How are they similar?
Just because the process is about the same. You take the code, you translate it into machine, I guess, instructions, and then you do your testing, you make sure it works, you debug, and that's the common workflow is you write your code, you build it, you test it. Sometimes you write automated tests if you're disciplined, which I try to be. Um, and it's I mean, some people ask me, how can you be a developer when you're blind, which is a understandable question, but it really isn't that special, honestly, because you just, I mean, especially when you're using the command line or the shell, it's just text. So it really doesn't offer any challenges that you can't overcome. Of course, if you're doing visual stuff, then you have a disadvantage. But most of the time, you don't have to. If you're writing back-end code or audio games or what have you, it really doesn't hinder you in any way.
Are people still writing code in Notepad these days? Do people still do
Well, I'm not gonna recommend it, but I do. So if you want the
Not
honest
even in
answer,
Notepad too?
well, I have that, but since I got my new machine, I haven't installed it yet, and I just forgot. So yeah, I'm in Notepad. I mean, I have all the editors, but it's just I guess what I'm used to. I'm not
Hmm.
saying it's optimal, but it's what I have.
Sure. Yeah, why not? So what are some of the most common accessibility barriers that you've hit in programming, and then how did you get past them?
Well, it was, I guess when I was starting out, I was trying to use IDEs, the integrated development environments. And, back then, it was a little bit more hit and miss than it is now.
This was in like
So
2003, right?
yeah, but I mean, then I guess Visual C++ was usable, but I didn't write in C++ back then. So I was trying all sorts of things and I failed and then I tried again and I failed again. So you have to have a lot of perseverance and persistence when you're learning, especially because I learned on my own. So I mean, I never went to programming class or took a college course or anything like that. I'm self-taught, which has its pros and cons. But um,
Seems like
it
it's going well for you.
yeah, well, I hope so. But I do lack some theory that I sometimes miss. So, sometimes I have to read up on it and I just go grab some papers and, read about specific topics. But it just takes longer. If you're in a good, I guess, college course, then you can acquire a lot of the information that takes significantly longer to acquire on your own. It can be done, but it takes longer.
That makes sense. So the originally the IDEs were kind of a barrier because they were hit or miss. Once you what was the solution to those was working in command line, right?
Well,
In the plain
yeah,
text.
or learning, like I guess figuring out which IDE I like the best, and a lot of it is also personal preference. It's not like, they were unusable. It's just that, whatever you're most comfortable with. I used an IDE called Code Blocks for a long time. I haven't used it for years and years, but I used to, and I used to use MinGW, which is a minimalist GCC for Windows. GCC is a very popular compiler on the Unix platforms, Linux and so on. Used to be for Mac as well, but now they switched to C-Lang. But anyway, yeah. So I was using code blocks, and even before that, way back in the day, I used an IDE called Dev C++, which is, I think it's dead now. I haven't heard it mentioned in a long, long time. But that's how I started out, and I was very confused. But I struggled through it, I guess.
Now that you're doing most of your development in command line, are there any accessibility issues that come up?
No.
That makes sense.
Yeah, it's a,
Because it's all text
simple
based.
answer. No, not
But
really.
when you're working on something with Elias that has a complicated GUI, do you have accessibility barriers when you're trying to test the software?
Yeah, but I mean, our new front end is done, with web technology. So most of the time, that is more or less usable. I can, bring up some, one thing or the other from time to time and say, hey, can you change this control? Can you label this element? Things like that.
Hmm.
But generally, I don't even use the front end very much. I do stuff, in the back end only, which, is not necessarily always ideal because the front end is simpler to use if you know your way around. But while right now, a lot of things are, under active development, I do well with the back end, where I don't need to use the visuals.
That makes sense. Would you say Elias is accessible for blind people?
The new one will be. Elias 3, unfortunately, isn't. We tried, but Qt5, which is what we used back for our UI framework, it has accessibility features, but they're meh. They leave a lot to be desired. So
Oh,
yeah.
okay.
So
I
yeah,
see. That's
we're
fair.
switching now to a like I said, web-based front end, which will it can it has its own drawbacks, but overall it's much better and it's much easier to make it accessible.
Right, right. Yeah, that makes sense. Is that like an Electron
Yes, exactly.
interface? Okay, gotcha. I see. A lot of developers are now using Electron, I guess because it's cross-platform. Um, is the main benefit. Is that true?
Yes, I mean, like other frameworks like Qt5 and WX widgets are also cross-platform, but I guess, it's also easier to find people, if you're looking for designers, UX people, a lot more of them will know CSS, HTML, JavaScript than, knowing a specific UI framework that, like Qt5,
Ah,
Qt
that
or
makes sense.
yeah, so you
That
have a
makes
lot
sense.
more, choices when it comes to hiring good people.
Got it. Okay, thanks for answering my dumb questions. I appreciate it. This is no longer the interview part. This is just me asking things I don't know.
But they're not dumb
Um,
questions.
the, we pay you to say that, so
Well,
thank you.
yeah, but we're not going to discuss the amount live.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Not
No.
live. Yeah, no. We'll only disclose that in private direct messages on Twitter.
Was it
Please message
6,500 or
us.
7,500? Sorry, no, just kidding.
We'll meet in the middle. 7,000.
Okay.
7,000. 7,000 yen. That is
Yeah,
Japanese yen.
sounds good.
So, what got you into all of this? You said that you were self-taught as a programmer. So, what got you into programming specifically?
Because I was angry. Because when I was in, I guess, sixth grade, so when I was about 12, I realized that all of my friends at the time were playing, Game Boy and Nintendo, whatever they were playing, and I found maybe like one or two games that I could play, and that was it. So, I tried to find others, and I couldn't. So I got mad, and
That's
I,
fair.
yeah, and I thought to myself, okay, if there aren't going to be games that I can play, then I'll just make my own. So that's, I guess, sounds rather ambitious, and it was. It took a few
That's a
years.
great mentality. I wish more people thought that way these
Yeah,
days.
I mean, I was naive. I don't think I realized, how much, like how hard it is to do. But, I guess that also helped me to get started, because once I got started, I got a taste of it, and I thought, okay, I'm going to continue. And it took a lot of late nights, a lot of, I guess, sleep deprivation, but I guess I got there.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, a lot of old school gamers will know PB Games and which later became Blast Bay Studios. Um,
Yeah, but we're
and
not
we,
going to
we
talk
talked
about
about
that.
that
That
earlier.
is
Yeah, we're not gonna not
the
gonna
deep dark past, and we're not gonna we're
as-
not going there.
we're not paying you enough yen for that.
No, no.
What's the what are you working on currently? We talked about the game a little bit, but the game is on hold for a little while because you're working on
Yeah,
other
because I
things.
don't know why, but I got this idea that I wanted to make some text to speech voices. So that's what I'm doing right now, in both Swedish and English. I'm doing the Swedish one, and then I hired a friend of mine to do the American one, or I guess one of the American voices. Still
What
under development, but they're coming along well. I've
what brought
been
that on?
I don't know. I can't. I can't. It started in March, like late March, and now it's October, and I'm still doing it. I was thinking at the time, like when back in March, that it'll just take a month or two, and yeah, here we are.
So
So
much for that.
yeah, yeah. No, but I had to, implement the complete language support for Swedish, and that was difficult. That's my native language, for those of you who may not know. Um, and yeah, I also had to record 5,000 sentences for my voice, so that took a long time. It's like 5.5 hours worth of audio. It took a while.
How long did that take?
Oh, I think I did it over the course of 3 or 4 weeks, because I also had the disadvantage that I don't have a braille display, so I had to
Ooh,
listen to each prompt and then memorize it and record it and
right,
then, yeah, verify it for correctness and then move on to the
right.
next one. That was
And
hard.
that just sounds so monotonous.
Yeah, it was hard. I'll tell you
That
that.
sounds dreadful. So it sounds like, I mean, to go through so much, you're really passionate about it. You're really committed to the project. So what do you want to do with it? What do you want to do with them?
I haven't decided, actually. I mean, it depends on I guess, the final quality of the voice. I've been building models in the background for the last few months, and overnight and so on, because it takes a long time to build each one, and I've been tweaking settings and making them better and better. And yeah, I mean, I've been saying it for the last 3 months, but I hope this is the final one I'm building right now. It's been going since last night.
And it's what time is it over there? It's 4:30 over there. So
Yeah,
that's
exactly.
it's been
Yeah,
going all night and all day.
yeah, but it's
Um,
not. It's only about halfway.
oh wow. Why? Why does it take so long?
Because it's a I guess computationally intensive process. Even though it's using
Sounds like it.
several cores and so on. But yeah, it's heavy. So
What's driving you to do it? Because you're learning something new?
yeah, I'm learning a lot. About phonetics and about how to you know I guess how text to speech works in general. In this specific case, it's called statistical parametric synthesis. Um, It's through a framework called Festival and Festvox, which is it's primarily for Linux. But like I said before, I have this Windows subsystem or Linux subsystem for Windows that allows me to run it on my Windows box, which that makes it a lot easier for sure.
Right. Yeah, I imagine that makes things a lot more efficient for you.
Yeah, we
Um,
can maybe this is going to be a slightly older model. It's in 16,000 hertz. My current one is at 22,050 hertz, but we can maybe play an older clip to give you an idea of what it sounds like.
yeah, of course.
Yeah.
Yeah, let's give him a sample. So this is a Swedish voice, and we'll do the normal one first. We'll do the normal sample first.
Okay.
Detta är ett exempel på hur den nya talsyntesen Philip låter.
And then this is what it sounds like if you double the speed of that.
Detta är ett exempel på hur den nya talsyntesen Philip låter.
And then if you cut the speed in half.
Detta är ett exempel på hur den nya talsyntesen Philip låter.
And finally, back to normal speed, but double the pitch.
Detta är ett exempel på hur den nya talsyntesen Philip låter.
And I think that sounds pretty good, actually. I think that sounds pretty good for... I've never heard a Swedish voice before, so I don't have a lot to compare it to a Swedish synth, but I think that sounds really good for an early model.
Thank you.
That stops at 16. I'm really excited to see what the new one's like. Maybe it'll be used somewhere, and I'll come across it. That'd be
Who
really
knows?
cool.
Yeah.
Maybe we could use it as a premium voice for one of our apps. We have a couple of different reading apps, so maybe we can partner up on that. That'd be
Yeah,
cool.
I mean, as I said, I'm making American voices too. So
Yeah, and it would be great. It would even be great for our Swedish audience. That could be really fun.
yeah.
To,
Though I
to
would
check
feel
out.
sorry for them if they had to hear my voice all day long.
But yeah, they'd just be reading hundreds of pages narrated by Philip Bennefall. It would be
Yeah.
a pleasure.
No,
Yeah, man.
no, that's a punishment that I don't want anyone.
Thank you so much for all the time that you've given us. I really appreciate it. It's always fun. I'll add this to our chain of interviews.
Yeah.
In 30 years, I'll be able to write your biography from all of these.
Sounds good.
Yeah.
Well,
Where can people keep up with your project if they want to learn more about what you're doing or see what your latest releases are when you put out the
that would
synths or
be-
new game?
Well, I guess that my private website, I guess my private little company is Blastbay. That's still up. I don't update it very often, but yeah, it's blastbay.com, and then Elias is eliassoftware.com. So ELIAS software.com. And yeah, those are the two places that you'll probably find me. And yeah, I mean, you can follow me on Twitter as well. There's Blastbay on Twitter, and I think there's also Elias is also on social media, a bunch of them, of course. So you can keep
Yes,
up that way.
absolutely. And check out their YouTube too for all those samples that we were talking about earlier. The Elias examples are really cool.
Yeah, and we're
So
putting
take a
out
look at
new
that.
content all the time as well. So yeah,
Nice.
keep an eye on it because there's always new stuff being posted there.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Philip, for your time. This has been a lot of fun. I always enjoy these SuperSense Presents things, and it's great to reconnect on this. So thanks for hanging out. And
Yeah, thank you so much.
I look forward to the next time in 2027
Yeah,
with the new game.
yeah. Thank you for inviting me.
Absolutely, my pleasure. This has been SuperSense Presents. Thank you guys so much for hanging out with us. Remember, we are at SuperSense AI on Twitter and Facebook, LinkedIn as well. You can follow us, supersense.app, for the newsletter, which also has the blog, including other interviews with artists and blind professionals like Philip. He's a professional, I'd say, like 2 days out of the week.
Yeah,
2 out of
let's not
7.
go too far. Let's not go too far. Put that in quotes.
Yeah.
No, I have a lot of fun, and that's the thing. I enjoy what I do, and that's
Yeah, that's how you have to do it.
Yeah.
Likewise, you have to have fun in the professional world, or it gets it can get tedious and get really difficult. So
Absolutely.
you gotta make it fun. You gotta do what you love and just call it work.
Yes.
So thank you guys for hanging out, and we'll see you next time.